Welcome to another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast from Green Spot Restaurant here in Montreal. I'm Aaron Rand, along with Bill Brownstein of the Gazette, Lesley Chesterman, and our special guest today, the Liberal candidate in NDG, Désirée McGraw. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Let's begin by thanking our sponsors who make this all possible, the folks at Guaranteed Industries, at Empire Auctions, and also the folks, of course, at National Carpet. And I thought we'd begin by clearing up a misconception. So we had the debate last night, and again, this issue of the Liberals voting with Bill 96. Eric Duhem seemed to go out of his way to keep saying, we're the only party that voted against it, we're the only party that voted against it. What's your explanation for that?
Thank you for putting that on the table, because I want to be absolutely clear that the Liberal Party was the only party in the National Assembly to have voted against Bills 96, 21, and 40, and I believe the Conservatives have one representative in the National Assembly. It is possible that that one representative voted against 96, but in favor of 21. So to be clear, we are the only party in the National Assembly that opposed all three of those bills, including 96.
But you heard Eric Duhem say, accusing Dominic Anglade, accusing the Liberals of working with the CAQ on Bill 96. So what does he mean by that, and what does that mean?
Well, again, so we opposed the bill. However, in the National Assembly, and perhaps this speaks to the lack of understanding of how government and parliamentary processes actually, legislative processes actually work. So parties who are actually elected are in committees, and they work in committees on different pieces of legislation. So yes, all parties, including the Liberals, were part of a committee around Bill 96. The goal was try to limit and mitigate the damage. So Liberals support the intention of Bill 96. I always say the best part about Bill 96 is the title, Promoting and Protecting the French Language in Quebec. That is a shared goal. 95% of Anglophones share that goal. That is a consensus. That is not an issue. The question is how one goes about it. In my view, Bill 96 has no place in a free and democratic society. It is rooted neither in evidence nor in justice. You can't promote one thing while stepping on the rights of others, and particularly minorities. So yes, Liberals were involved in committee to try to limit the damage. One of the very specific pieces that the Liberals brought was access to free French instruction for Anglophones, something that doesn't exist right now. So if you're coming from Ontario or BC, or if you're an Anglophone in Quebec, you cannot get free instruction outside of school. So that's the piece that we're most proud of. There was a piece around CEGEPs, which I'm happy to talk about as well. But just to be clear, the goal was to limit and mitigate the damage inflicted by Bill 96, and the Liberals voted against it.
Bill?
What was most bizarre, intriguing, was the fact that Mr. Duhem went after Madame Anglade for, in English even, betraying Anglophones. Not going after Legault, but going after Madame Anglade. And I found that kind of interesting and bizarre. And a lot of the focus was, when talking about flip-flopping on Bill 96, was the issue about like French courses, as you know, in CEGEPs, and it was the Liberals who brought up something that even the CAQ never brought up in terms of taking more French courses, and they went back. They went back on it, and all the rest, and that was really the issue that they were focusing on.
And that is true. We need to own that mistake. That was a huge mistake. That was improvisation and not in line with our values nor our constituents. So it is true that in committee, and I've tried to understand this myself, how this happened, that in committee, our representatives in that committee did propose the idea of these additional 3 courses in CEGEPs that would be obligatory. Initially core courses, eventually walked it back to just courses in French, or French courses, and then most recently with efforts by myself and others to try to remove that altogether. In other words, it's still in the bill, unfortunately, a watered down version, but our Liberal position is that those 3 core courses, or 3 courses, are now optional, effectively taking them off the table. But to be clear, our position is and always has been to oppose caps on English CEGEPs, on enrollment in English CEGEPs. We have always and continue to support choice by students in terms of access to post-secondary, and we absolutely support the reinstatement of much-needed funding for the expansion of Dawson College.
Which
They
is
want to
not
be
going to
clear.
happen.
No, because the CAC agreed to it and then withdrew it.
Right.
And guess what that expansion was for? You think we might need some more healthcare workers in our system right now?
Let
so
me
we
ask
need
the
to own that
question.
mistake, though. I do apologize for
Sorry,
that.
you go door to door
Yeah.
in NDG. There are francophones and anglophones. Are you hearing two different concerns from francophones as opposed to anglophones? Because I hear the other leaders say, no one's talking about Bill 96. Yet in NDG, I have the impression that people are talking about Bill 96. Is there a split between what francophones are concerned with and what anglophones are concerned with in your district?
So in NDG, over 50% of residents self-identify as Anglophone, about a quarter Francophone, and a quarter other languages. So that's the makeup of NDG. When I go door to door, it takes me 2 to 3 hours to get through a single block because people have a lot to say in this election. And a lot of it has to do with Bill 96. I want to add, though, just what unifies and what I'm hearing everywhere, concerns around healthcare, concerns around the cost of living, and I think we're hearing that across the province. So that we're hearing across the board. And in addition to that, in NDG, I am getting an earful about Bill 96. There's a lot of fear and anxiety and uncertainty around this, whether it's long-standing English speakers who've lived here for generations or decades to newcomers who may not speak English or French very well. So it's a real issue. I always say I think that the CAC is setting Quebec society up for failure, particularly the next generation. And as a parent, as a mother, as an educator, as the mother of a student who's about to start CEGEP, as a daughter of a CEGEP teacher, I am very concerned about the next generation. And we need our young people to succeed at a time like never before because of the environmental and the aging population, all of these issues. So yes, I am hearing about Bill 96. I'm getting an earful, for sure.
Are you getting that same earful that Bill brought up, though, about why the Liberals went ahead and flubbed the issue on French courses in CEGEP?
I
Well,
am
that was
hearing-
specifically David Beardenbaum who brought
And
that up.
David?
So they don't necessarily know the names, what they understand, and I think it's really unfortunate that this mistake was made, and we have to own that. What's happened is that it's somehow been misconstrued as somehow supporting Bill 96. We do not support Bill 96. So I am explaining that to people, and I think once they hear that explanation, we've also had op-eds on this. We are trying to clarify the position. So for your listeners and your viewers, we do not support Bill 96. We support the intent of supporting French. Everybody does. That is not controversial. This is a punitive, coercive, regressive law that sets all of Quebec society, business, youth, students, healthcare, justice up for failure. And I am very committed to setting up the next generation.
It was brought
for
up
success.
even that by the others in the debate that, in fact, they had gone further with that proposal than the CAC had ever gone. In fact,
it's hard for me to. I cannot, and I will not defend what happened before I even joined the party. So I joined when I became a candidate, when I was asked by Madame Anglade to run. I think it was improvisation on an issue like education. We would never improvise on the economy. It was unacceptable. It was a self-inflicted wound, and I hope that through this election, I believe we can recover from that and get back to our fundamental liberal principles, which are unapologetically federalist, aspiring to represent all Quebecers, and defending rights and freedoms of all Quebecers, including minorities.
So
That's
I think
what we
we're all
stand
okay
for.
now with the fact that you own it, that the party owns it. It was a mistake. We're going to try to move on from that. Leslie, did you want to ask something?
Yeah, so if you look at Colin Standish and Balarama Holness, their big issue, of course, is language. But Balarama Holness is not here. His big issue is Montreal. So language aside, there are a lot of issues for Montrealers. I'm wondering how you're handling that, because Montrealers are feeling very neglected by a party that represents the regions more so than our city, which is the capital, the economic engine of this province. So what are you going to do specifically to defend Montrealers in a CAC government? Because right now it's not looking like it's going to be a Liberal government, right? But will you also stand up for Montrealers?
So
for our needs.
When I can't concede what you just said, we're still fighting. We're still fighting to form government.
Sorry,
absolutely. We're in an election, and the only poll that counts is election day. So, putting that aside,
yes.
if we were to form opposition, so I think opposition matters in a democracy, and the quantity and quality of candidates in particular matter. So I have accepted and made it a condition of my accepting to run for the Liberal Party to be a strong voice for our community. And that community is, yes, it's NDG in Montreal West, but it's the much broader community of minorities, including linguistic minorities, and Montreal. So, of course, NDG is a key part of Montreal. I'm a proud Montrealer. I've lived in other parts of Canada. I've lived abroad. I've always come back to this community by choice. It's where we're raising our family. So I will be a strong voice, not only for NDG in Montreal West, but for Montreal, which I do believe is being pummeled and punished by the CAQ government. And so I will not be taking lessons from anybody about being a strong voice and championing for my community and my city.
The Corner Booth podcast is brought to you in part by Empire Gold, paying the most for your collectibles. And remember, at Empire Gold, you get paid right on the spot. And nobody pays more for your gold or silver than Empire. Online, empiregold.ca.
It was very noteworthy last night, during the debate, that almost no mention of Montreal, almost no mention of the Anglophone community, except for Duhem doing a little bit of grandstanding there with speaking in English. But it goes to show you how little they seem to care. No address to the Anglophone community, very little talk about...
No English debate.
No English debate. It's just, it was almost shocking.
In fact, last night during the debate, Bill, the only time Montreal even came up was when François Legault accused Dominique Anglade or asked her about immigration. How will you prevent immigrants coming and wanting to stay just in Montreal and not go into the regions?
So this is just, so one, I want to be clear, the Liberals and Dominique Anglade was ready and willing and wanting to do a debate in English. We are showing up for every debate. The CAQ, it's not only is François Legault refusing to do a national, a Quebec-wide debate in English, CAQ representatives are not showing up locally to any debates in English, or debates in general. Certainly in my riding, the CAQ is just not showing up for debates and not any debates in English. So I just want to be clear. So it's disrespectful to a very important part of Quebec. I think the CAQ has sought to minimize and trivialize Anglophones. They've described us as accidental tourists who we don't have to worry about Anglophones leaving because we prefer the festivals here. Last time I checked, people who come to Montreal for festivals are tourists. So they are minimizing and trivializing our strong contribution and our connection. They are also describing us as homogeneous. Anglophones are very diverse. You know, this is a very outdated narrative about what the Anglophone community is. I think it's an inconvenient truth of our diversity in terms of socioeconomics, in terms of ethnicity, etc. So we're highly diverse. We are not monolithic, and we bring so much to this province, and we are proud Quebecers and Québécois. And I'm not going to be defined by François Legault. And I invite other Anglophones to not be defined and not, and not give up. So it's living in a different reality to not talk about Montreal. Yeah. We are an economic engine.
Community.
We are an economic engine. Well, but Montreal, which, as you know, is a diverse, highly diverse city. I always say diversity is a fact. Inclusion is a choice. They are used interchangeably. They are not the same. Actually, what we have now is a perfect storm of a highly diverse community, and city in particular, that is being excluded. That is a recipe for disaster. One of the things I did before coming back to Montreal is I ran an international college for almost 5 years out in BC, students from over 100 countries, some of them coming from Syria, Rwanda, Afghanistan. I would listen to their stories of what it was like to be in places where groups of people were diminished and degraded and excluded. It doesn't end well. I'm not comparing Quebec to those, but what I'm saying is it is very dangerous when leaders start to treat some people like second-class citizens. And one of the big reasons I'm running is to promote that, not just diversity, but to create an inclusive society. We can promote and protect French in an inclusive way that creates a sense of belonging and confidence, and not fear and anxiety, which is what we are hearing. I'm hearing everywhere.
So you mentioned about this college that you ran. We heard the premier a week or so ago compare immigrants and then use the words extremism and violence. He tried to walk that back. I'm not so sure a lot of people bought that excuse or bought the apology. What did that mean to you?
We don't accept. That was not an apology. That tweet was not an apology. The premier knows what he's saying. He's a savvy, I'll use the word savvy man. He knows what he's saying. He's speaking to some people out there that may subscribe to that. But look, I always distinguish between the government and the people. One of the things that gives me hope, there was a recent report by the Association of Canadian Studies that shows that when Quebecers learn that a piece of legislation or set of policies are discriminatory and particularly go against not just the Quebec, but especially the Canadian Charter, support drops considerably. This gives me hope that as Quebecers understand that these pieces, that this language, that the words that the Premier is using is unacceptable. So it is unacceptable to equate immigration with violence and extremism. In my mind, a Premier, and I'm on Dominic's economic team, like on the green team and the economic team, a Premier who doesn't understand, especially with the labor shortages, that immigration is not only c'est une richesse, it's a richness, but it's actually promotes economic growth, has disqualified himself from economic leadership. A Premier who doesn't understand climate change and has missed targets for 2 years in a row now disqualifies himself.
Says we're the
from
best
leadership.
in North America.
We are not. We no longer are.
Well, why does he keep saying that?
Well, he's wrong about it. And you can just ask the IPCC or Quebec's own Commissioner on Environment and Sustainable Development. She said, we are flying blind on climate change. We have missed our targets for 2 years in a row. No excuse. And actually, I would just add, I think the division that this Premier is creating around language and identity is very deliberate. I say because he cannot divide Quebec from Canada, he is dividing Quebec on itself.
Divide and conquer.
And he is
that's
distracting us from issues and crises that matter in healthcare, in climate change, and on the economy.
The Corner Booth podcast is brought to you in part by Guaranteed Industries. They are a Lennox Premier dealer. They can take care of all your heating or cooling needs, residential, industrial, or commercial. GuaranteedIndustries.com or call them at 514-342-3400. They are a Lennox Premier dealer. Let me ask you one other thing, and I found this bizarre. We talked about this earlier on. So here are these two new parties, the Canadian Party of Quebec and the Conservative Party of Quebec now. They're running ads that actually criticize the Liberals and not the CAQ
right.
with respect to trying to get elected, which I found very odd, and I'm wondering what your reaction to that is.
Well, Aaron, you've made a very good point. I think it's the first time in the history of Quebec that parties have been formed to run against an opposition party. Like, it's ridiculous. And it just shows we're focused on the CAQ because we're focused on forming government. If we don't form government, we're focused on being a very strong opposition. I don't know what these, I actually call them interest groups, not the Conservative Party. They're not new. But there are two new parties that have come into the mix who don't aspire to represent all Quebecers. So what I want to say is this. I have worked in the nonprofit world. I've started non-government. I created Al Gore's Climate Reality Project in Canada. I've run NGOs. There's a place in our democracy, but they are not political parties. My approach to politics is to have difficult discussions within my party, and I think you can hear, like, I have a fairly strong voice, and to have those difficult discussions and then work them out within the party, not to go off in an echo chamber in some interest group to represent one set of interests, important as they are, or one part of Quebec. No, that is not my approach, and I don't think, my own view is it's not an effective approach. It's actually an unhelpful approach. And instead of running and targeting the CAQ, which is what we're doing, they're targeting us, and they're misrepresenting on Bill 96 and other issues our actual position, and that has to stop.
But aren't they your direct competition in your particular riding?
No, the polls
Are you saying
show
the CAQ is your direct competition more so than Mr. Holness?
Well, if polls are to be believed right now, the second party, it sort of fluctuates between Québec Solidaire and the CAQ. But the biggest poll is Election Day. I'm not saying I don't take this seriously, because I understand that what has created these quote-unquote parties or interest groups is this sense of unrest in the communities. I take that seriously. That's why I'm running. When Dominic approached me, she approached me on climate change because of my climate credentials. We had a long conversation on Earth Day. And at the end of the conversation, I said, this is great. I care about climate change. We need to up our game. And I love your plan. I'm an Anglophone in a riding that largely identifies as Anglophone. And I cannot even consider this if I can't be a strong voice for my community. And that's why I'm running. So nobody is going to, I have nothing to learn. I'm not going to be taking lessons from these other so-called parties on being a strong voice for our community. My riding knows, people who know me know I'm an advocate, and I will be a strong voice, I hope, in the National Assembly.
So last night, Eric Duhem, and this has been boilerplate for him through the campaign. Yes, he did it in English for the one sentence he used last night, and he keeps saying the Liberals have betrayed Anglophones. And when he says that, obviously that bothers you. What does that mean?
Well, I think on the Quebec, again, not to belabor the point, on the CEGEP piece, that was a huge mistake, and one that also bothers me. It bothered me a lot as a parent, as a former college president, as a daughter of a CEGEP teacher for 25 years, and with a kid who's about to start CEGEP. So that was problematic. That was a mistake. But I don't think it's true on the
Well, he
on the
makes
other
it general,
issues.
though. He doesn't point to that. He simply says the Liberals betrayed Anglo-Quebecers.
Well, I don't agree. I think we made a mistake on that particular issue. I do think that Anglophones have felt neglected in general. I am hearing that at the door. I'm listening to that. And all I can say is I'm taking nothing and no one for granted, and I'm working hard to gain, if not regain, the confidence of NDGers and Montreal Westers, in particular Anglophones, who have felt set aside. I think we do have to acknowledge that. We do have to acknowledge that. I think betrayal is a strong word, but I'm putting myself out there to be a strong voice. I think we need to focus on the future. Mistakes were made in the past. We need to learn from those mistakes, and we need to move on. And I think I'm not the only one in the Liberals who aspire to be a strong voice. I think there's a renewal happening. There's a renewal happening in the Liberal Party, and there'll certainly be renewal after this election.
The NDG Montreal West is a Liberal stronghold. I mean, frankly, I wouldn't bet the farm against Liberals taking it, but the fact of the matter is Liberals are in trouble in other areas on the island, in Laval and all the rest, and there is a threat. Do you see that changing as a result of the debate? Because as Aaron pointed out, by the way, I thought Madame Anglade was way more impassioned in French than I've ever seen her in English. And
Which kind of begs the question, to Bill's point, why hasn't she been able to stick with respect to Anglophones, to the vote in general? Because you know what the polls show? The polls show the Liberals are just barely now ahead of Quebec Solidaire. Why has her message not been getting through up
to
until
break
now?
through,
yeah.
Look, it's a great question. I've gotten to know Dominique a fair bit through this election. I have to say I have great affection and admiration for her as a working parent. She's really an exceptional mind. She's got a lot of heart. Look, she was elected really just before the pandemic hit. She hasn't had a lot of airtime. All the governing parties, including François Legault, they've had a lot of airtime, obviously. So there's that piece. I think there is maybe a language piece. Look, I'm bilingual, but I can be much more passionate in English than I can be in French. That's the reality. English isn't her first language. I just think we can't ignore the reality. Her English is very good,
But
we
it
are
was more than that. It
ourselves
was
in
more
our
than a
first
language. It was the fire in her belly there that I saw last in the debate, which I haven't really seen. It's been much more on the defensive, on the English side, always.
She's been doing a lot of explaining,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And last night she was actually on the attack. And I think it was very noticeable last night to people who have up until now said, where is that fire? Where is that passion?
Yeah.
We saw it last night. The idea is, can she carry this through? Do you think she can?
I do. I mean, actually, I think she's an exceptional woman, and the debates are I was looking forward to these debates because I think it's a strength, because she's such a woman of substance that she can go that way. I wish there was an English debate, because I think she would see that in the English debate as well, her vision for this province and what she also embodies as a woman leader and the only leader from a racialized community. I think there's a lot there, and I wish there were an English debate so the English community could experience that more directly. Look, campaigns matter. She's out there. I think to get to know her is to really like her and admire and respect her. And I hope that people will really listen to what she has to say, really look at our platform. We were the first ones to get our platform out there. And then to demonstrate that she's got a really strong team around her of people who are rooted in our communities. I wasn't parish. I born and bred in NDG. And Montreal West. So, I think that's what the team is, but as a team, we are a strong team. And I think that the English-speaking community should feel reassured that there are strong voices that she listens to. Remember, I'm on her economic team. She's asked me to join her team. I believe I'm having influence, and I will continue to be a strong voice. And I just hope that through this campaign, people get to know her better And I wish there was an English debate so they could see that passion and that substance that she brings.
How are you going to get people out to vote? Because I think there are a lot of people.
Right.
You know, I live with quite a separatist person at home, and he said, well, there's no PQ person running in our riding, so I'm not going to go out and vote, okay? So, but there are a lot of people, because of the Liberals, a lot of Anglophones, who are saying, I'll sit this one out. I'll wait. I'll see. What are you doing to get people out to vote? I mean,
I'm talking to them.
right.
Like thousands of them. I am out pounding the pavement. We are making phone calls. Some people have said, I have not seen someone come to my door in over a decade. I'm like, I hope I get brownie points just for showing up, you know? So we're talking to people. We're listening to people. I'm listening to people. You are right. This is a concern that people might stay home. And the rhetoric, the language of the premier is designed to disenfranchise and disempower people who then might stay home. So we need to get the message out that every vote counts, that even if I'm historically in a Liberal stronghold, I take nothing for granted. And to me, it's not just about winning. Yes, I want to win. It's about having those conversations. It's about having the weight, the heft of my community behind me so I can be a strong voice during what I think may be some fairly turbulent times ahead. I hope not. And so it's having the conversations and listening to people. I'm out and about everywhere, and I think people who have the opportunity to engage see that we are taking nothing and no one for granted, and hopefully people will be, you know, and we're going to work hard to get the vote out. And I would say, even if you're not just get out and vote. If
Yeah, we
vote,
need a
vote.
strong opposition too. You know, that's another problem too, is that we can talk about the polls and the CAC, but if we don't have a strong opposition, we'll just keep railroading everybody.
I just don't think we can give up. When I talk to some elderly people and they're like, well, my grandkids are leaving, my kids are coming, I'm afraid for my future. What I want to say is, we can't give up. We're not giving up. We are here. We are a fundamental part of this society in Quebec, and we need to move forward, and we can't give up and just go away or fade away. This is our home. We are not going to be defined by a premier that doesn't get it.
Yeah, but we also can't just pretend these mistakes didn't happen. You know, you're saying, oh, Anglade made this mistake, or they said this about the class. You know, these things stuck. I also have a child in CEGEP. The whole situation with the French classes is understandable, but a difficult situation. And these things matter. So it's like, we can't just move on, like, oh, we made a mistake. Like, that is a challenge. You know, there are a lot of Anglophones who do feel that they were, you know, left out of the conversation. So, you know, it's true that people will stay home and people will not vote. And you do have an uphill challenge because that was a big mistake.
Well, to that end, and you've owned that, that's a really interesting point, because I remember asking the question, so you're going to go vote. Are you going to go vote for the party, or are you voting for the candidate in your riding?
Right.
Because that's an issue for some people. Leslie's right. There are some people disillusioned now with the Liberals, but maybe you, as the candidate in their riding, as a Liberal, can convince them that, hey, yes, I'm here fighting for you. Do you think that is happening, or do you get a lot of anger from people at the door saying, oh, you're the Liberal, I don't want to vote for the Liberals anymore?
I'm getting both. I'm getting the anger at the door and the disillusionment, and usually by the end I'm getting I'm going to vote for you because I can see you're strong and I can see you get it.
Any slam doors?
This is why it takes 2 to 3 hours to get through a blog, folks, because these are the conversations that I am having. I've not had a slam door
Because
yet.
that would be the telltale sign to me. No,
Don't go to Bill's house, is what he's saying.
I have to
No.
avoid where do you live? I'll
And that's
stay.
difficult.
not in the same district. No, but I'm just wondering if that kind of anger has manifested itself in terms of that kind of outrageous behavior, one way or another, just like fury.
I have not had I've been confronted with some anger for sure. I did a meet and greet last night. I've been doing these meet and greets. I think 30, 40, 50 people showing up on a given evening to have a meet and greet in someone's kitchen, or more often than not when the weather's good, in a garden. And and so actually a lot of people are actually coming out. What's great is people do want to engage. Like, I hope you're wrong, and I know you hope you're wrong too, about people not voting. We all want people to vote. I'm actually getting the sense that people are mobilizing, and they're turning this fear and even anger against the CAC, though. Let's just be super clear. Like, of course, I'm the Liberal candidate, but like, we all need to focus on the real problem here, which is we have a government that is unfit to govern, that is ignoring all the crises that matter, that is manufacturing division, sowing anxiety and fear That's not leadership. That's the problem. So can we please, we are not perfect. We have a lot of work to do. I'm going to do the hard work. I'm focused on the future. Let's not lose sight of the real problem here, which is the CAQ government and François Legault. They've got to go.
We're going to wrap it up at that point. I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning. We
I guess
appreciate
I have
it.
to go then too.
I guess so. Best of luck.
Thank you so much. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Corner Booth podcast is brought to you in part by National Carpet. Beautiful designs and rugs from around the world. Classic and contemporary and design services available, plus full installation. National Carpet online, tapinational.com.